Hello, friends, and let's get started.
Alex enjoyed looking at the scenery outside the car window. Dense trees, small hills, lawns with wavering grass. He had never imagined that after 6 years of married life, he would find himself so far away from the city and in the company of his old friend Graham, whom he hadn't seen for ages. They used to have stormy student years, student parties, sports competitions, laughter, and confidence that the whole world at their feet. Then life had scattered everyone to different states. Some had families, some had careers, some had both. He glanced at his wife. Kelly was engrossed in her phone's feed. Occasionally, she turned to her husband to say something, but mostly she remained silent. There was a look of anticipation in her eyes, however. She had always loved trips to the countryside, adored the atmosphere of large country houses with swimming pools, spacious living rooms, and ancient verandas. Alex, too, liked to get away from the hustle and bustle, though he and Kelly hadn't had that luxury very often lately. "Look," Kelly said, pointing ahead. "I think we're here." The house was indeed impressive. It was 2 stories high, with a wide porch and wooden columns covered with wild vines. Next to it was a neat swimming pool, partially surrounded by a glass veranda, and a guest house that seemed like a miniature copy of the big one. White-gray walls, a bright red door, a spacious lawn where lounge chairs or barbecues could be set up. Graham stood at the gate, waving his hand. He had certainly changed a lot since his student days. Once gaunt and a little slouchy, but now he looked quite stately, with a slight graying on his temples. At Alex's sight, he smiled and opened his arms. "Man, it's been years. How many winters? Come on over here, bro." They hugged, patting each other on the back. Then Graham turned to Kelly, tilting his head slightly. "Kelly, you look so much better. How long has it been since I last saw you?" 3 years. "Thank you, Graham. More than that, I think it's been 5 years. Before we were married, we'd seen each other in passing, and then she waved her hand as if to point out the endless busyness and family matters." Graham took his keys out of his pocket and gestured for them to come in. Alex took their things, Kelly's suitcase, his own bag. He felt that the atmosphere was conducive to a light, carefree vacation. He had to forget for a couple of days, at least, about city worries, quarrels, and misunderstandings that had been accumulating between him and his wife lately. Perhaps this trip will be a kind of reset. The house inside was flooded with sunlight. Antique furniture was interspersed with modern devices, and there were several other guests in the living room. 2 young men, apparently Graham's co-workers, and a couple who, judging from their conversations, were also here for the weekend. Their names were Joan and Mark. "Come in. Make yourself at home," Graham announced. "I have your room ready upstairs. It overlooks the pool, so you'll enjoy the view." Alex thanked and led Kelly upstairs. The room was simple and cozy. A large bed with a soft headboard, a dresser against the wall, a vase of fresh flowers on a nightstand. Kelly took a quick glance in the mirror, fixed her blonde strands, glanced out the window, where she could see the pool glistening in the sun, and smiled. "I like it already. I feel like I'm in a movie about luxury living." "Well, we deserve a little luxury," Alex smiled. "How long can we stay in the city?" Everything seemed to be fine, but soon Alex began to notice details. When they came downstairs, Kelly and Graham were talking a little more quietly than to the others, occasionally exchanging chuckles, as if remembering something they had in common. The looks. She would raise her eyes to his with a hint of shyness, and Graham would look at her as if he'd known every feature of her face for a long time. Alex tried to write it off as the fact that they had actually known each other for a long time. Just a weird friendship, nothing special. But something inside was clenching. By the evening, a whole group of 10 people had gathered. They planned to organize a mini party by the pool, a grill, a musician with a guitar, light snacks, strong drinks. Alex, to be honest, felt a pleasant excitement. Finally a normal vacation, which was not very often. It seemed to him that this weekend would be good for him, and Kelly would strengthen their union. As the sun began to set, everyone went out into the courtyard. The lanterns were lit, and small garlands sparkled around the pool. Light streaks of light glided across the water. Kelly dove into the water, laughing and flirting. Alex realized she'd already had a couple of cocktails. She didn't usually joke so loudly, but oh well, it was a vacation. Graham defiantly jumped into the water, causing an explosion of splashing and cheers. Kelly was next to him, and Alex noticed her touching Graham's shoulder for a second before she pulled away. He felt a little uncomfortable, but he didn't want to make a scene. Better to relax, follow the example of his friends, grab a cocktail, and enjoy life. "Join us, Alex," Kelly shouted from the other side of the pool. "This place is amazing. I'll be right over." He smiled, winked at her. That evening, however, he felt sick, a sharp headache, an unpleasant heaviness in his stomach. Maybe he'd overheated in the sun, hadn't eaten enough. His head was pounding, and the tearing throbbing prevented him from concentrating on having fun. Alex decided to go inside and lie down, counting on the pain to go away. Kelly escorted him out with a look, yelling for him to remember to drink water. "I'll be there soon, just for a little swim," she said. The words sounded casual, but Alex's insides tingled unpleasantly. Something in Kelly's voice was too cheerful, too playful. He waved away the burdensome thoughts. "Relax, it's okay, it's your friend. It's your wife. You're just having a vacation." But the unpleasant feeling kept rustling somewhere inside, like a snake trying to be pushed out of his head. He went upstairs to the bedroom, pounced on the bed. And indeed, after a while the pain receded slightly, replaced by a light, aching shroud. Alex closed his eyes. The sound of the party were all around him. Someone's laughter, splashes of water, music. He just wanted his head to stop whining, for Kelly to come back, and at some point fell into a restless sleep. He woke up in the middle of the night, slightly disoriented. "Where am I?" But immediately remembered that he and Kelly were at Graham's country house. There was darkness outside the window, only the slight flicker of streetlights. Alex felt his shirt damp with sweat and his head still heavy. There was no sound in the room, no fiddling, no music. Maybe the party was over and everyone had gone to bed. He reached out to where Kelly should have been lying. It was empty. The bed was cold. Probably sitting somewhere with her girlfriends, chatting, he thought. But as he got up and walked out into the hallway, all he heard was ringing silence. He passed by the living room, which was empty too, with only embers smoldering in the fireplace. He even looked out onto the veranda, where the pool shimmered ghostly in the dusk. No one. An uneasiness prickled inside. Alex stood, listening. Hearing no voices, he decided that everyone was probably asleep in their rooms. Kelly, too. Maybe she'd gone to her friend's room next door or sat down for a minute by the fire and talked. Except he hadn't seen a fire. His heart clenched unpleasantly when he realized that he didn't know where his wife had gone. But, on the other hand, there was no catastrophe in it. He still felt weak and decided, "Okay, she'll be right back. I'm going to go to sleep. We'll talk about it tomorrow." So he did. But sleep didn't come so easily anymore, and Alex spent the rest of the night half asleep, occasionally jumping up at every sound, hoping that Kelly would quietly enter the room. She never did, however. Wade did open his eyes and saw the morning light. The clock showed almost 8. Alex felt a little better physically, though inside everything felt taut, as if he had slept on thorns. But the first thing he realized was the absence of his wife. "Kelly?" he called out in a low voice. Into the empty room. He went to the window, pulled open the curtains. The yard was awash in the freshness of morning, a light dew on the grass, the water glistening in the pool. There was no sound of music. Everyone must have passed out after the night's fun. But then he noticed movement. A woman in a white terry towel wrapped around her figure came out of the small guest house, holding something in her hands. Slippers? Alex took a closer look. The back, the hair. Oh, it was Kelly. His heart plummeted as if someone had dropped him into the abyss. What was she doing there in the guest house? Why in a towel? Why is her hair wet? Literally a string of questions ran through his head in seconds. Without a moment's hesitation, he took a step away from the room, walked quickly downstairs, and went out into the yard. There, on the path leading from the cabin to the big house, stood Kelly. She looked at him as if she hadn't expected to find her husband up so early. But then she put on a smile. "Hi," she said, trying to look calm. "I couldn't sleep last night. I decided to go for another swim, and then I accidentally wandered into the guest house. It was empty, so I sat there and I just dozed off." "In the guest house?" Alex questioned, feeling the cold slowly choking his thoughts. "But why didn't you come back to me?" "I didn't want to wake you up," Kelly shrugged, but she kept her eyes averted. "You were sleeping so soundly, and I thought I'd just read a book for a while, cool off after the bath. And that was it." The words sounded smooth, but there was a falseness in them. Alex had never been paranoid, but now it was as if he was shot through with the feeling of lying. He didn't believe for a second that his wife had gone to the guest house to read a little and then accidentally fell asleep there. Just then, Graham came out to them. He looked tired, wearing a crumpled t-shirt. When he saw Alex and Kelly, his friend froze for a moment, as if he didn't know what to say. Alex felt a heavy resentment building in his chest. He couldn't formulate a thought at once, but he saw Graham's gaze lowered to the floor, and that silence was more eloquent than any words. "Hello," Graham said, but the greeting sounded too quiet and tentative, not like a man who showed his hospitality all the time. Alex opened his mouth to at least ask something, but Graham had already turned away and walked back into the house, leaving the two of them alone. What was that just now? Alex thought. Everything was starting to boil inside, but he didn't want to make a scene right on the front lawn of the guest house, and in the presence of his wife, who knows what she was doing at night and with whom. "Let's go inside," he said at last, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm starving. I want coffee." Kelly nodded, shrugged. They walked toward the house in silence. On the way, Alex couldn't help but notice a few towels and bathing suits hanging on the veranda by the rack. And then he noticed Kelly's swimsuit, top and bottom, drying neatly on a hanger off to the side. Why didn't she bring it into our bathtub? Involuntarily flashed through his mind. It seemed odd. Kelly didn't usually leave her things anywhere. She was pedantic about such little things. They drank coffee in almost complete silence. The house seemed dead. Most of the guests were still asleep. Soon Mark and Joan showed up, also embarrassed to say hello. Kelly said she was going to shower and change and disappeared into the hall. Alex went outside for a while. He wanted to sort himself out. He walked along the path that led to the trash cans and glanced inside the trash can where the bags were thrown out at night. There he noticed a brightly colored condom box. All right, that happens. But there wasn't a single packet inside the box. Empty. He didn't know who could have used it, since there was a whole bunch of people in the house. But the feeling of unease only grew. Walking back toward the house, Alex caught for a moment a scrap of a phrase from an unfamiliar woman talking in the kitchen with a friend. "Did you hear that? I thought they would at least be quieter." Shut up," the other woman replied in a hissing whisper, glancing at Alex. He pretended not to hear, but his heart throbbed. They? Who's they? Wasn't that Kelly and Graham? Why wouldn't they be whispering about them? "No, we got to pull ourselves together. Don't make a scene unless you know exactly what's going on." Meanwhile, he found his wife standing in the hallway, quickly texting on her phone. When she saw him, she instantly tucked the phone into her pocket. "Who are you texting?" Alex asked, trying to appear calm. "To my friends," Kelly answered without blinking an eye, telling them how cool it was here. He wanted to ask why she was so nervous, but he didn't say anything. He realized he needed to gather more facts before he could have a conversation. The day went on, but Alex was too excited to enjoy the rest of the day. He felt as if everything around him spoke of deception. The glimpses of the guests, Kelly herself, who was acting a little more coldly than usual, as if trying to keep her distance. And Graham? He tried not to cross paths with Alex at all. He'd go off to the garage, or he'd make noises if anyone joined them. Toward lunchtime, Alex realized he couldn't stand it any longer. He left the house, walked around it, and saw Graham near the small storage room where the gardening tools were. He was busy doing something, but he frowned at the sight of Alex, as if he realized that a conversation was inevitable. Alex stepped up close. "I want to ask you straight. Don't be silent. Were you with her last night?" Graham sighed heavily, as if he was preparing for a serious conversation, but tried to keep his face. "Alex, look, I didn't mean for this to happen." "It happened like that?" Alex felt anger rising inside. "Answer the question." Graham met Alex's gaze for a moment, then looked away. "Yes, she wanted it herself. I didn't talk her into it, I swear. She came." Alex didn't let him finish. In a rage he had held back for too long, he threw a single punch to his face. It was swift. Alex's fist slammed into Graham's cheekbone, and he fell back against the wall, dropping the garden shears from his hands. Blood trickled from his split lip. "Why did you do that?" Graham groaned, struggling to keep his balance. "Ask yourself why you did this to me and to my wife." Alex was seething. He hadn't planned to kill or maim Graham, but he felt it necessary to show his rage. "You want me to carry you on my shoulders after this?" "I'm sorry." Graham lowered his head sullenly. There was confusion in his voice, as if he really didn't know how to get out of it. "I'm sorry, Alex. I never meant for things to turn out this way." "Fuck you," was all Alex said, stepping back. He could already feel the anger giving way to piercing pain, but he wasn't going to start a fight. As he walked away, he noticed that Graham wasn't trying to catch up with him and didn't say anything, just wiping his lip, staring after him, trying to figure out what would happen next. That evening, near sundown, Alex and Kelly found themselves alone in the living room. The others had either dispersed or stayed away. The atmosphere was too tense. Apparently, everyone had already guessed that a storm was coming. "Tell me, did you sleep with him?" Alex asked quietly, though inside he was seething. Kelly turned pale, nervously crumpled the edge of her t-shirt, looked away. "Yes," she finally squeezed out, "but it was a mistake. I don't know what came over me. I just got tired of living in a pattern." And Graham was there at that moment. Alex clenched his teeth to keep from yelling. He didn't want to embarrass himself by yelling. He didn't want to sob and beat his fists against the walls. He knew that the most important thing right now was to keep his dignity. "May I ask how long ago this started? Or is this just a one-time thing?" No. It happened now for the first time. I felt a kind of she was silent, searching for words. I wanted a new sensation. "I'm not saying it's right. It's disgusting. I'm confused. I'm sorry." Alex stood in front of her. There were no tears in her eyes, just an icy calm. "Understood. You don't need to pack. I've already packed your things." Kelly was literally stunned. "Wait, what? When am I supposed to go?" "Wherever you want to go. You can go to Graham's. You can go to a motel. You can go back to town, get a hotel. I don't care. This is my friend. This house is his. But I'm not under the same roof with you anymore." Kelly covered her face with her hands. She seemed ready to burst into tears right there in the living room, but more out of shock and the realization that Alex wouldn't beg her to stay and wouldn't be patient. It seemed to her that he would just pass by, curse her, but calm down. But it was more serious than that. "Please, give me a chance. We can fix this," Kelly said through her tears. "I made a mistake, I know. I don't know what came over me." "No, you knew what you were doing." Alex raised his eyebrows. There was finality in his gaze. "A mistake is when you miss a plane or forget your keys in the car. This was a willful betrayal." Alex left the living room, went up to their room, took out a suitcase from the closet, which was already full of his wife's things. Some of it he just piled in there as he found it. Makeup bag, dresses, underwear. He couldn't be bothered to organize everything neatly. When he came downstairs, Kelly was sitting on the couch, her face covered with bitter tears. He set the suitcase down at the front of the house. "You can't end it like this." She exploded, her voice coming off hysterical. "Alex, please. I mean, we've been married for 6 years. This can't just be destroyed in one moment." "It's not in an instant, Kelly," Alex said. "You destroyed our marriage while I was sleeping on the second floor. I'm putting a stop to this." She pressed her palm to her lips, her eyes filled with despair. "Give me a chance, please. I'll do anything." Alex only turned away, gesturing toward the door. "You chose him, so go to him. I choose me." He knew he might seem insensitive or cruel, but he saw no other way. Cheating under his very nose, at his friend's house, and then making pathetic excuses was too much. Kelly, sobbing, got up and walked to the front door. He opened the door like a doorman, but with a completely cold expression. He carried the suitcase himself, so there wouldn't be any long delays. They got into the car. Kelly sobbed in the passenger seat, trying to speak, but each time she only broke down into inarticulate complaints. Alex was silent, looking at the road and trying to concentrate on the steering wheel. In the back of the trunk were her things, haphazardly thrown in a hurry. Not 20 minutes later, he pulled up in front of a small roadside motel. The cracked neon sign said the establishment was modest, but he didn't care. "You can take it from here," he said, turning off the ignition. I'll pay for a couple days here to get you up to speed, but after that, it's up to you where you want to live. I think you'll contact him, or get a room on your own. Kelly tried once more to apologize, but Alex just silently walked out, took the suitcase, and put it in front of the building entrance. The waitress at the front desk looked surprised at the crying woman and the cold man, but she asked no questions. "That's it, I'm gone," Alex said, turning to Kelly to say goodbye. "I'll send you the papers. We'll get a divorce. I'm not going to live with a traitor." Tears glistened in Kelly's eyes, and she opened her mouth, but he was already heading back to the car. Her voice trailed off into a quiet Alex and hung in the dusty air. He got behind the wheel, started the engine. His heart was pounding so hard that his temples were thumping. But he also felt relief. Heavy, bitter, but liberating. Painful, but honest. Half an hour later, he returned to the city, to the place where they used to live together in a small, cozy house. Only now, when he went inside, he felt keenly that there was no warmth in the room, and there would be none. His first thought was, how can I live now? But right after it came the realization that he would live on, only without betrayal. Alex went into the bedroom, took out his phone, and looked at the picture from their wedding that hung on the wall. Kelly in a wedding dress, he in a strict suit. They were both glowing with happiness. It all seemed like an illusion now. He took the photo off the wall, pulled it out of the frame. Tear it up? Burn it? For now, he just put it in his desk drawer. Lingered his gaze on the wedding ring. Took it off and put it there too. In the kitchen, he poured himself a glass of water, drained it in a gulp. His mind was spinning with thoughts that he had to deal with the documents, hire a lawyer, that there was a lot of fuss and formalities ahead of him. But one thing was clear. He was not going to pull any more burdens with the man who had betrayed him. A few days passed. Kelly texted, left voicemails. Somewhere begging for forgiveness. Somewhere angry and calling him an unfeeling despot. Alex didn't respond to any of them. He realized deep down that he could show weakness if he heard her voice trembling or saw her tears. So he preferred complete ignoring. After another week, he called a lawyer he knew, explained the situation, agreed to start the divorce. He explained in detail what papers were needed, what their joint assets were. Alex agreed that he would have everything together by the end of the month. Time flowed slowly, but Alex noticed that with each night his resentment and pain let go a little bit. He felt devastated, but not destroyed. He knew he could handle it. A month went by. One evening, Alex picked up his wedding ring, his and Kelly's. They were at the bottom of a drawer, next to a picture he never dared to tear up. Clutching them in his hand, he remembered all 6 years of marriage, the highs, the funny little things, the first joys of married life. Then he pictured that scene by the pool. Imagined how Graham and Kelly had basically spit on him. He went to a pawn shop and sold the rings for a pittance. Not because he needed the money, but because he wanted to set the record straight. That evening, sitting on his couch, he mentally went back to those moments of morning shock when he'd seen Kelly coming out of the guest house. At the time, he'd still wondered, could it be wrong? Maybe it was an illusion? But now, no, it was very much so. He wiped his hands with a towel, opened his laptop to look at his email. He took a sip of green tea and spoke quietly out loud, as if to himself. When I stood by the pool that morning, I still had my doubts. Now I don't. I didn't lose my wife. I got rid of the traitor in my bed. There was no joy in those words, but there was firmness. He felt that life would go on, only without Kelly and without painful illusions. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.